guys, welcome back to another episode of In My Twenties, the podcast with me, your host, Bookie Smart Slyman. Today we are going to be talking about the price of a dream, and kind of the subtitle, if you will, would be understanding each season's sacrifice and priorities. So before we start, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast or to the YouTube channel this is being filmed for, then please do on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're listening to this. Please do subscribe, leave me a rating or a review. Let me know what you guys think of it. It always helps. Thanks to everyone who has commented, shared this podcast with a friend, messaged me on Instagram. I'm loving the conversations that we're having, so thank you for doing that. And yeah, let's get into this episode. So before we start, I want to talk about a story that I wrote about last year, which some of you might be aware of. And if you're not, then great, because this story is pretty epic. And it is the story of how I forgot my passport and nearly missed my wedding. So for those of you who don't know, I got married last year in the beautiful, beautiful Amalfi Coast in Italy. And I was on my way for my bridal shower, so it was a whole kind of like 4-5 day wedding weekend, and it was fantastic. And so I was supposed to be getting there on Wednesday and kicking things off with my bridal shower, and I missed my flight because I had forgotten my passport. So what actually happened was, on Tuesday, one of my friends, who was also my bridesmaid, she had come over, slept over. We had, I think, a 6 a.m. flight to catch from Gatwick Airport, and we drove there. My husband, myself, and her got in the car, drove to Gatwick, parked our car, and getting my wedding dress out and our suitcases. We're putting them on the coach that's going to take us to the airport. And then my husband goes, "Does everyone have their passports?" And I was like, "Yeah, obviously." And he was like, "Oh, let's just all check." And so he brings his out, my friend brings hers out, and I'm like frantically searching my bag, and I'm like, where is my passport? This has never happened to me, you guys. So I was probably both like shocked but also very calm, and I was learning a lot of life lessons at this point. So one of them being like, when things happen that like take you by surprise, don't panic, which I used to normally do. And so I was like, I think I might have forgotten my passport at home. This is maybe around like 3 something or 4 a.m. Our flight is at 6, so we're about an hour away from home. I'm like, okay, let me drive back, pick my passport up. I don't think I'm going to be able to like make it for the flight because I'll probably get to the airport when check-in has closed. And so because I have to check in my suitcase, then I'm not going to be able to make it and then make it past security and all of that stuff, right? So let me try and book another flight. As I'm about to get into the car, I'm just getting into the car, I just quickly go on my phone and I open Skyscanner and I book the flight that I see, right? Skyscanner was already on like London to Naples, and so I booked that flight. And as I like got into the car and like started the car, I just said, let me double check what time is it, so I know like how much time I have to, get home and then come back. And also let me make sure that it's Gatwick Airport or Heathrow. So I check and then I see that I've booked the wrong flight. I had booked London to Naples, but I had booked it for Friday, which is when my makeup artist was arriving. My wedding was on Saturday, and had been looking for flights for her. So, because I had booked her flight like a couple of days before or something. So I just literally saw the first thing that came up. I saw the next one being like, I think 9 or 10 a.m. and I booked that, but it was wrong. And so I'm like, okay, this is the second crazy thing happening today, but let me calm down. I'm driving home. I decide to call the agency, like the travel agency where I bought the ticket from, to ask them if they can refund me or like move me to an earlier flight that was on the Wednesday when I was actually leaving. So I called them. They're like, no, this was a non-refundable flight. I had called them literally within like 5 minutes, and they were like, yeah, apologies, like this is a non-refundable tickets and flight, so nothing we can do about that. And I was like, I literally just booked this like within 5 minutes. Like, I'm pretty sure like all of the confirmations haven't even happened yet. And she was like, well, madam, this is just the policy of the ticket that you booked, whatever, whatever. I said, cool. I get home and I was like, let me just calm down. When I get home and get my passport, and I'll just be in a better like mind frame. And so I get home, I get my passport, put it in my bag, check that it's in my bag. My husband is calling me. He's like, should we wait? Like, do you want me to come? Like, what's going on? Are you okay? And I'm like, I'm okay. I have my passport. I'm about to book my flight. And he was like, oh, I thought you booked one, like, as you were entering the car. And I was like, yeah, it was for Friday. And he was like, okay. He was like, okay, when's the next one? And then we were on the phone together when I was looking for it. And so the next flight, I had gotten home maybe, say, 5 or something like that, or 5:30. And there was another flight for around, I want to say like 8:40, 8:45. So I was like, oh, there's another flight at 8:45, but it's at Heathrow. So unfortunately, we're going to lose the Gatwick parking that we had paid for. I'll just call an Uber to Heathrow. And he was like, oh, okay, that's fine. You have lots of time. It's going to be about an hour to get to Heathrow. But if I left then, which was around like 5:30, he's like, you'd be at the airport at 5:30. And then that gives you a good 2 hours before the next flight, which is great. And so I'll be in Naples, all in all, by around like 11, 12 noon. My bridal shower's in the evening. So I'm like, fine. As long as I am in Naples, in Amalfi Coast, in the hotel by 6 p.m., I'm good. And so I called the Uber, it's a Tesla, and I'm like, oh, fantastic. I was like, you know what? There's a price, there is a reward rather. There's a reward in like calming down and like not being like angry or frustrated or all the other things I could have been. So I get in the Tesla. I'm feeling myself. I'm like, oh, I'm in a nice Tesla, going to make my flight. I might have lost the money, but like, it's fine. These things happen. It's part of life. So I'm supposed to be at the airport in an hour, and then I have 2 hours till my next flight. As I am like, I think I was reading a book or scrolling on my phone, and I look up and I'm thinking like it's been an hour and a half. And I asked the driver, I was like, are we near the airport? He's like, no, we're still about 30 minutes away. I was like, that can't be because my flight is now in an hour and a half. And so if we're going to be at the airport, then I'm going to have about an hour, and that's cutting it too close to check in and then go through security. And he's like, yeah, there's some like traffic or accidents or something. And I was like, well, can you find another route? And he was like, well, like you're going to have to call Uber. If I have to like change the route, they're going to charge me all of these things. I'm literally like, I have my wedding this weekend. I have to be at Naples by like 12 or sometime, like I have to catch this flight. So he's like, okay, fine. I'm going to like try and reroute us through a different way. And I was like, yes, please do. Like, I'll tip you like £20 or whatever. Like, just get me to the airport ASAP. And so he finds another route, and then we finally get to the airport. It's about just over an hour, so I'm like running to the front of the line of the for check-in, and I'm wearing a jumper that says like bride on it, so everyone who sees me, they're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, is everything all right? And I was like, no, like I missed my first flight, I need to get on this flight. And then as I'm going through and like trying to ask people like, oh, please, can I get in front of you? Please, can I get in front of you? Someone tells me, oh, the flight's been cancelled if you're going to Naples. And I was like, maybe your flight, honey, but not mine. And so I get to the counter. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry. I'm running, a bit behind. Can I check in? And they're like, yeah, what flight are you getting on? And I was like, this flight to Naples. And they were like, oh, it's been cancelled. I say, okay, cancelled. All right. I'm here thinking like God is having a laugh in heaven because today is just everything that could go wrong was going wrong. So I say, when is the next flight? And they're like, oh, they're now trying to book people through Lufthansa. Some are directly to Naples and some are with a layover. And I was like, okay, can I have the next one that's direct? And he was like, okay, you have to go to the other line and like rebook the flight. And I was like, great. And so I'm running to the other side, trying to rebook the flight. I get there, they literally, I'm like, oh, I want to book the next direct flight to Naples. And they're like, oh, we literally just sold out of that one, but there is another one which is in like 3 hours at like 11:30 a.m., but there is like a 2 or 3 hour layover in Frankfurt in Germany. I'm thinking, really? And so I, of course, I didn't have any choice at that point. So I was like, yeah, sure, book me on that one. And then once that was sorted, I called my husband. I was like, yeah, I'm not getting to Naples until around like 5 or 6 p.m. I am, what is the word? I am frustrated, but not in this like angry kind of frustrated. I was frustrated because I was like, I've been up since like 3 a.m. or before that, and then driven to Gatwick, then driven back home, then like got into this Tesla Uber, and then went here and then cancelled. Like, I was just like, oh my God, it's been such a long day. It's not even literally 9 a.m. yet. But anyway, they booked me, and then thankfully, I get to go to the lounge and have breakfast because of my American Express card, which is great that I had that. So I'm in the lounge, I'm having breakfast. I'm like, you know what, it's okay. Like, honestly, I'm just grateful that I even like had my passport. It wasn't missing. Thankfully, this is not like the day before the wedding or something like that. Like, I might be a couple of hours late to my own bridal shower, but like, hey ho, you can't start the shit without me, kind of thing, right? So I'm getting some perspective and getting breakfast. It's nearly like time to check in. So I'm like walking to, sorry, time to board. So I'm walking to my gate, get to the gates, look up, it's delayed. You guys, I cannot make this up. My flight was delayed. It was delayed maybe like half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. But I was just in such utter shock at how bad things were going. It literally felt like things were going from bad to worse. And I was like, oh my God, am I actually not going to be able to make it to Naples today? Am I going to miss my bridal shower? All this time, by the way, my parents don't know anything. My mom had gone to Naples, I think the day before. My dad was coming in that morning, and my husband and my friend were now there in Naples. They had arrived with my wedding dress, and they bumped into my mom, and my mom was like, yeah, so where's the bride? Like, where's my daughter? And they're like, yeah, this happened, she forgot her passport. And I was going to call my mom, like, as I was boarding the plane, but then seeing that it was delayed, I was so mad. I think at that point, it was actually too much for me. So I started crying a little bit. I was literally like, oh my God, am I going to have to like miss this bridal shower? Anyway, in the end, I make it to the bridal shower. Okay, I get to Naples at like past 6. Thankfully, some of the other people coming from the wedding, some of my friends, are also, they weren't on my flight. They were on another flight that landed at around the same time. And so whilst I was waiting for a taxi to come and pick me up, I saw them and they were like, "How are you just getting here?" And I was like, "Girls, you don't want to know, okay? Because let's just thank God that I'm here." All of that story to say that the price of my dream of this beautiful like Italian summer wedding on the Amalfi Coast cost me a lot, right? There was literally like money attached to missing not one flight, but 2 flights. Well, one that I was supposed to have made and one that was the wrong flight. I think I managed to like claim back some money, but that's besides the point. The point of this episode is the price of a dream. And I shared that story to let you guys know about what it actually cost me to have my beautiful Italian summer wedding. And I really do think that that day was a true test of like character, because everything else from then, like as soon as I got to Naples, it pretty much went smoothly. Like everyone tells you, oh, your wedding day, like a bunch of things are going to go wrong. Forget it. I don't think that nearly anything went wrong with my wedding day. Like the whole wedding weekend was just unreal. It was beautiful. It was one of the most magical experiences of my entire life. And I'm just so grateful that I made it. But it wasn't without sacrifice, with the sacrifice of money, of sleep, of time, of effort, just to make that dream be fulfilled, just to realize that dream that I had wanted, for a while. So I want to read you part of the newsletter of actually this topic, the price of a dream. It says, growing up, we're mostly driven by circumstance and conditioning. We go to school, get good grades, graduate with a first class or a 2-1, get a good or decent job. You're told to marry well. Your priorities are those of your parents and up until you graduate from a first or second degree, you think you're living life for them because they've told you what to do so far, and life has been pretty linear. You work hard, you're moving up to the next level. You study hard, you pass your exams, you're moving up to the next level. And then you graduate, and life is supposed to like continue being linear. But boy, oh boy, we're wrong. So here we are, driven mostly by our circumstances and having the dreams that are thrown to us kind of by accident. Now, when it comes to the price of a dream, there are two schools of thoughts, right? There's a one school of thought that believes there is no price of a dream. There are only trade-off decisions. You can't have everything at all times. So, what is most important to you? And are you willing to do the things that prioritize those things that are required? Another school of thought says there is definitely a price for every dream, and my principle is to only go for what I can afford. If the price is too high, I have to forego that desire for that dream and move on. Knowing my strengths and my weaknesses and what I can afford allows me to only pursue those opportunities that are achievable. In the name of pursuing my dreams, I don't like to lose my peace. That cost is too high. So, guys, I want you to take a minute and think about any dreams that you have had and how much that has cost you in terms of sacrifice, in terms of, yeah, just like the actual reality. So for me, I know that the cost of greatness, being great in life, fulfilling my dreams and my purpose, it has cost me things that I definitely don't regret, but if I were to have sat down and count the cost, like the Bible tells us to, like before you work on a house, like sit down and count the cost, know what it's going to cost you, then maybe I would have made certain decisions. The cost of the price of a dream of owning a property at what, 24, cost me so much in terms of like the moments that I missed out with loved ones, with friends, with family, because I was aggressively saving and investing towards that dream that I didn't really have time for everything else. I didn't have money for anything else. I barely had money for myself, right? Let alone other people. The cost of, or the price of a dream of getting into a career that I feel very aligned to, challenges me in the way that I want to be challenged, helps me grow my potential, helps me work with, brilliant people, the brightest minds in the industry. It cost me a lot just in terms of comfortability, for one, like getting out of my comfort zone and getting to a place where I had to think further than myself. I had to really, really believe that I was going to get a job that not just paid me really well, but like fed my soul really well, which might sound a bit dramatic for a job, but you have to understand that like 5 years in, or 6 years in, at that point, I was really struggling with like work and my identity. And so now I know a little bit better, right? So I don't attach my identity to my work. But at that point, I had gone through what, two jobs, similar career prospects that just didn't do anything for my soul. It was literally just a job that I woke up, I did it, and that was the end of it. And I really, really struggled. So for me to have come out of my like very cushy financial advisory job in the Big Four and then quit that without a plan, that was very sacrificial. That cost me a lot, right? My husband and I had just gotten married legally, and so of all the times to be transitioning or figuring out your life, I did not think that that was the best time. And so it did cost us potentially that income that I could have had whilst we came together. Thankfully, living with someone is cheaper than living by yourself. And so we were able to navigate that together, right? That journey of me figuring out what I wanted to do next. I want to read something from another author. This is an article about paying the price for your dream. It's from Joshua Fields Milburn. It says, it turns out that the American dream was never my dream. Rather, it was competing with my dream, clouding over my revelatory desire to be a writer. The big house, the fancy car, the impressive job title, the six-figure salary, the superfluous stuff. I had all of it, but none of it made me happy. None of it allowed me to pursue my dream. Instead, there was a void. Something was missing. I didn't know what that void was, and working 70 to 80 hours a week didn't give me much time to explore. And so before I left my job, I had to pay the price for my self-indulgence 20s as that decade descended into the horizon. I could no longer afford the lifestyle I'd been living, a cog in a wheel of greed and lust and happenstance. Instead, it was far more important for me to pursue my dream, to pursue my purpose for writing, than it was for me to keep living that empty, opulent lifestyle. A lifestyle which, by the way, was not bringing me happiness. Thus, pursuing my dream didn't come without a cost. And so everything else had to go. I decided that pursuing my dream was worth it. Although I now make less money than I did a decade ago, I've never been happier. That happiness, that happiness didn't come without a price, though. It meant getting uncomfortable, questioning my stuff, and getting rid of my crap. It meant refocusing my finances and reprioritizing my life. It meant living more deliberately and intentionally. It meant I had to stop living the lie and start living my dream. Moving forward with a new life of focus and passion and purpose and far less stuff. And it has paid off. I really like this article because, especially within the context of the price of a dream, I said earlier, like the subtitle is understanding each season's sacrifice and priorities, and I think that this article kind of touches on it. And so let's dig a little bit deeper. When I think about seasons, we all talk about seasons, right? We talk about there's a time and a place and a season for everything, but I don't know that we all really dig deeper when it comes to understanding what season you're in, and also how that season is going to change some things in your life and make you reprioritize some things and deprioritize some things. So for me, when I was moving jobs or changing careers, I had to be laser focused. I knew that that was a season of like deeply uncovering what I wanted in a job, and it meant that I couldn't give as much energy and passion and zeal and consistency to some other things, because this season of my life was simply about doing the work, showing up for myself, asking really difficult questions, being uncomfortable about certain realizations, and just like speaking to people, really just figuring out things, right? Like figuring out life at 25, and at, what I wanted to be and where I wanted to be at like 35 and 45 and the rest of my life, right? And although I didn't put too much pressure in terms of like, I wasn't necessarily looking for like the right way. I was just looking for a way that I was going to be comfortable with, like going forward. Like I wanted my next career to be one that truly made me feel like I was contributing a lot more positively to the work that I was doing. I knew the kind of recognition that I wanted. I knew how the work I wanted to do was going to make me feel. Like I had to really, really think through those things, right? And so as a result of thinking through those things and figuring out all of the things that I hopefully now have or I'm getting or becoming, I had to deprioritize certain things. So at that point in my life, I wasn't necessarily like leaning too much into my friendships or investing too much into my friendships or community, because I couldn't. I was trying to do SSI, but not fully giving my energy because I couldn't give it my energy. The only thing I could really prioritize in my life was work and also being a wife, because I had just come into that season of being a wife and doing life with my husband. We had never lived together before. So that was interesting. I mean, it was great because I think before we got married, only, most people would be able to relate. You want to like do life with your person and have endless sleepovers. And then you realize that it's not quite, doesn't quite work like that. You're merging two lives and two different ways of living and doing things. And so those were really the two things that I had to prioritize, like how to be the best wife and also how to get a job that was going to fulfill me in the way that I wanted the job that I have now fulfills me. And thinking back on that time, I think that I was intentional with like letting some of my friends know, like, this is the season I'm at. Like, I may not see you as much or call you as much. Like, you're very welcome to come and see us. But know that, like, in this season, if you see me, you're like seeing me and my husband, right? I also didn't have extra money to like go for brunches and lunches because I was saving my coins, because I didn't know how long this like discovery of purpose, or this new season of figuring out my next step with work, was how long that was going to take. And so yeah, I wasn't buying anything for myself. I wasn't indulging in self-care, like all of these other things that I had in the previous season but I no longer had time for. And so that was the price of a dream. When I think of what it took to get me to where I am, I'm like, I sacrificed a lot, right? And I know that sometimes we don't talk about those things in your 20s because you just kind of deal with them as it comes. But it's important to truly acknowledge and to realize that, again, I tell you guys this all the time, but by showing up and doing the work, like, you are becoming the person that you want to become, and you might not even realize it. But I'm here to actually hopefully help you give context and perspective and make you also acknowledge yourself and pat yourself on the back and say, you know what, I'm not where I was, and I may not necessarily be where I want to be, but I'm making progress towards getting there. And the sacrifices that I'm making are now worth it. The price of a dream can also be very like controversial if the people in your life don't see things the way that you see it. So if I had friends who, for example, I used to call all the time or be on FaceTime with, or who I used to see regularly, and then I told them, hey, like, I'm getting married, and so I just want to spend a couple of months just really focusing on me and my husband, and just, be intentional about the intimacy that I wanted us to build, and just the systems and structure that I wanted us to put in place to be able to like run a smooth ship as far as like home life and work life. And so I'm not able to give as much. If I had friends who I said that to and they kicked up a fuss and they were like, you know what, you're different, you've changed, I can't believe that, you got married and now you don't have time for us anymore. Like, how can we be friends? Honestly, I don't really know what I was going. I don't actually know what I would do with that, because I didn't even have the energy to deal with something like that. And I'm very, very grateful to my friends who were very supportive, who still checked on me, who loved me loads, who sent me encouraging like messages and words of advice and wisdom, and prayed for me, prayed with me. Friends are a lifeline. So I'm really, really grateful that I had good friends, that I have good friends. But that's to say that the price of pursuing a dream can cost you things like friendships. I know people who, when they've decided to maybe pursue a really big project, some of their friends or their families haven't responded very well. They've gotten a lot of, who do you think you are? Or, oh, now you think you're better than us because you've gotten this really big award, or you've done this amazing accomplishments. And people then have like inferiority complexes and things like that. And that can be really tough, because I think that anyone who's pursuing a dream, if you actually sit down and ask yourself, what is this going to cost me, you might not be as excited about the dream anymore. When I was starting Adaya House, my second business, if I had sat down and said, the price of this dream is over £20,000, do I have that kind of money to put into a business that may or may not work out? I don't know. At that point, I was just excited about the idea. Like, adrenaline was kicking in, and all I wanted to do was just fulfill that dream, right? And I felt very strongly like called to it at that particular time. And so I know that even if I did sit down to count the cost, I would still feel like I should have done it anyway, because I know that it was part of my calling and part of my journey and my story. But I know people who would be like, no, thank you. Like £20,000 is a deposit for a property, or it is the amount of money to do something else, a project that maybe is not as complicated as starting a fashion rental business in the height of the pandemic or before the pandemic, and then trying to see that through. And I really, really spent over 20 grand pushing that dream. And that's money that I didn't get back. I mean, I got it back in other ways that's not necessarily like monetary. Like, I made a lot of friends, I sold some things, so I did get back some money. I didn't get back all of the money. I got back some of the money, but yeah, that was very difficult to think of as like the price of a dream. And so I want you guys to really know and understand that different seasons will require different versions of yourself. And also different seasons will require different priorities. And so if you're at a stage in life where you are transitioning from one version of yourself, maybe like you're single and then you're getting married, or you're getting into a new relationship, things will change and things will shift, and you should really take time to know how you want to be intentional about making the most out of that season. So my husband and I have been married for about a year now, and we're still figuring things out, but we've definitely gotten our like rhythm and our dance with regards to like how we run and live our lives. And if I did not take that time, those couple of months, especially when I was still looking for a job and figuring out what I wanted to do next, I think that we would be struggling now. And so although that did cost us like money, because I didn't have income coming in, and I couldn't pour out into other projects that I was doing, it helped us. And now I'm really appreciative of that period, and I don't regret anything. Another article that I wrote a couple of years ago that I want to read for you guys says, from investing to making career moves to understanding your money season, you need to know where you're at. I have met people who want to invest, travel every month, buy a new car in a year, buy a house in 2 years, and still save money for an emergency fund, whilst being within the first 3 years of their career and earning under 40K. I'm not knocking the hustle, but my question is always easy. What is your priority? What can you do now? What can you sacrifice? Investing a good chunk of your salary might mean not traveling as often as you like. But if you do want to travel so much, then you may not have much savings after that. You might buy your dream car now and be broke later. Or you might even buy your first property and still be living paycheck to paycheck, trying to afford your mortgage and bills. I switched priorities, and this has helped me be very focused and disciplined in exactly what I need to do and not do to hit my goals. We can have it all, but not at the same time. So, what are you picking as a priority for this year? There's another part of a book that I love. It's called Working for a Dream. And it has this quote. It says, "There is no substitute for hard work. The success formula is hard work plus strategy. No one does it overnight. The more hours you put in and the more you immerse yourself, the more you know and the better you get. If you work hard, you're halfway closer to where you want to get to. It is what you do in the dark that puts you in the light." So these two different excerpts, one from the article that I wrote a couple years ago to this one from the book, I think really just drives home the point around like sacrifice and the price of a dream. Every dream that you want to pursue has a price. Even me doing this podcast, like it took us, like my husband and I are here in our home and we're trying to figure out like the setup. I had to go and get dressed and look all pretty. And it took us so much time. And that's time that we potentially could be investing into our relationship, maybe doing something nice today, going for a nice date, or just building more intimacy, right, in a relationship. But instead, the price of this dream, of this podcast, of me being here is a sacrifice in my relationship. It's a sacrifice worth taking, but it's definitely something that I had to know, but also I had to get my husband involved and say, hey, this podcast is going to take a bit out of me this season. And so instead of me like going grocery shopping, you might have to go grocery shopping because I need to take a couple of hours, work on the newsletter and then work on the podcast. Instead of us going out and catching up with all of our friends or hosting dinner parties or having games nights and having our friends over, I'm like, I need to kind of focus a little bit more on this thing in this season. And so I'm prioritizing this and at the same time prioritizing other things. And it's a dance and it's a balance. And I don't always get it right, but I try my best, right? I want to talk practically within the next couple of minutes as I round up about how do you make your dreams come to pass. So there's 7 different ways. It says the first one is you must believe in your dream. You have to embrace it. You have to let your dream become bigger than you. Become bigger than your thoughts, and doing that will mean that you're able to actually take action on the dream, because it's one thing to have a dream and just let it stay within you. It's a different thing entirely to actually say, you know what, I'm going to realize this dream, I'm going to take action towards it. So you kind of have to let the dream consume you. Number 2, perseverance, child. If you don't have perseverance, you cannot fulfill any dream in life. You have to have stamina. Are you in this for a good time or a long time? You know, the moment that God puts a dream in your hands, you have to be prepared for the challenges that will follow, and you have to keep pushing. Like, there's so many times that I want to start a new project, or even with the current projects that I have, I there's so many times there's challenges and obstacles, and at that point I can decide and say, you know what, I've done enough. I'm just, this one is above me now. You know, I've done enough. Let me just put my feet up and just chill. But I know that every dream has challenges, and that is part of the price that you pay for following your dream. You're going to have to get very comfortable with challenges and with being uncomfortable. So you must be prepared to fight the obstacles head on until God's plan for your life, for your purpose, comes to pass. Number 3, prepare and plan. The period before planning is preparation. And so many of us just go straight into planning. You haven't thought about your strategy. You haven't thought about the value in what you're providing. What is the bigger picture? You just go straight into it. You have to prepare. You have to prepare your mind, prepare in terms of like the cost financially, the energy. What are some of the things that you might have to rearrange in your life to accommodate this dream being realized? Nelson Mandela prepared for 27 years for the day that he will be released to fulfill the dream that he conceived. Number 4, be focused. There are many things that will distract you, because every day there is something literally warring for your mind. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the number of things that you can be in this season, right? There's so many distractions. Even within pursuing your dream, other little dreams would, you know, come up that want to distract you. So for example, I'm doing this podcast. I can get distracted if, you know, maybe one of the episodes goes viral and then all of a sudden I'm getting all these calls and emails from like different brands or different people reaching out wanting to collaborate. If I'm not careful, I'll be distracted on my overall dream by like smaller goals or like little shiny things that come. So you have to be very careful about distractions. Many things will get to your head, especially success, but I also always say don't let things get too deep into your heart. Number 5, speak about the dream. The power of birth in a dream is in the words that we speak. What are you saying about the dream? Are you always speaking negatively, like, oh my gosh, why did I start this? What am I doing? I'm sure this isn't going to work out. You know, you have to speak the words that you think will actually come to pass. You have to frame your world with your words. Right? The Bible always talks about like the words I give you are spirit and are life. and how the power of life and death is in your tongue. So you definitely have to watch what you say. How are you speaking about your dream to other people? You are listening to what you are saying. So be very careful about how you are speaking about your dream. Number 6, embrace the risk and count the cost. And I think this one is pretty, self-explanatory. There are risks that are associated with your dream, right? What if this doesn't work? What if this fails? Are you willing, like I said, to lose some money on this project that may or may not take off? Are you willing to lose sleep over something that is taking up a lot of your time these days? Are you willing to do what other people wouldn't do? Go to where other people haven't gone before to prove something to yourself. Number 7, pray the dream into existence. Proverbs 19:21 says, many are the plans of a man's heart, but it is God's purpose that will prevail. And I think above all of my other points today, this one I would say to focus on the most. Pray your dream into existence. You cannot do this just by willpower and luck and hoping for the best. You have to have God in it. You have to pray. So as I round up, I want to leave you with this poem, still from the book Working on a Dream by G. Fadbury. It says, to dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to be better far than you are, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far. To be willing to give when there is no more to give. To be willing to die so that honor and justice may live. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to rest. And the world will be better for this, that one woman or man, scorned and covered with stars, still strove with her last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you have found it useful. Let me know in the comments if you do. Do share it with a friend. Share it on Instagram. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a rating and review wherever you are listening to this podcast on. And I will see you in the next episode. All right?